The Steyr M9A1. It is a fantastic firearm and recently made a top 10 list I produced not too long ago. Be sure to check that out in the library when you get a chance. But there's still room for improvement, no doubt about that, and Steyr listened. Enter the A2 MF, specifically the L9. Let's dive in and check it out. What's up, guys? KS here. Thanks for joining me today as always. Going all the way back to the 1800s, Steyr's had a renowned history of producing weapons for both military and civilian applications. The M-series of pistols began production in the early 90s, and after several generations, they become serious favorites for enthusiasts. Offered in several sizes and calibers, it's easy to find one that best fits your needs. In 2019, the new A2 model was announced with the most significant enhancements to date. That's our focus today, but before we jump in, I want to thank my Patreons for helping out the channel. You guys are awesome. This is a crowdsourced channel, and becoming a Patreon or simply checking out the free-to-you links down below to gear I actually use does help keep the content coming since YouTube no longer supports the channel. Let's do a couple of rapid-fire comparisons and see where the L9 stacks up against some other firearms out in the market, one of which is going to be the Glock 19. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a Glock 17. I think that would probably be a better comparison, but at least to give you an idea of size. Now, try and line these guys up as best I can. Now, that Steyr is going to be 7.9 inches long, so certainly longer than something like a Glock 19. It's going to stand at 5.6 inches tall. Believe it or not, these guys actually square off pretty well in terms of height. However, 17 rounds in the L9. Now, we've got 4.5 inches in barrel length, and it's going to be 1.3 inches wide and about 27 ounces, just a little bit over. So certainly heavier than something like a Glock 19 and even a Glock 17, to be honest with you. But also, how does it stack up with the M9? This is a Gen 4 here, so the previous version to the new A2 MF version here. So again, a little bit longer on that L9 on top, but not quite by as much. Steyrs are a little bit on the bigger side compared to some of their competition. But again, they stack up pretty well. The backs look basically the same. There are certainly some differences. We'll dive into those. But are really great guns. I mean, they absolutely are. I'm a big fan of Steyr. So let's jump in and check out the features. All right, we're going to take a walk around the frame here in just a moment, but before we do, I want to show you the magazines. Again, I mentioned that it was a 17-round magazine. That is true. Now, this is a tester from Steyr. Thank you, Steyr, for this. Really appreciate it. It's going to have to go back home very soon. But 17 rounds, which is nice. It only came with one for the tester. I'm sure it will come with two if you buy one. But your older magazines, now this is a 15-round from the M9 with a +2 base plate on it. It actually works, and it works just fine. So having the one for the tester really wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I certainly had enough magazines to be able to run this thing and have some fun with it. But as we get into the frame itself, one thing I want to show you guys is this magwell. This magwell is fantastic. It was one of the big criticisms I had of the original M9 or L9, the S9, what have you. They had no magwell at all, so they've done a great job flaring this thing out. Now, it does protrude a little bit on the external as well, although not very much. It doesn't front, of course, although that helps grip your hand a little bit better as well. I like that, a little bit more leverage at the bottom. But again, great magwell. But as we get into the texture, this is it, guys. This is really where they made a lot of changes. We're going to bring back the M9 for a moment. I want to remind you guys of what the original one looked like. My big criticism of this firearm right here, aside from a lack of magwell, is the texture or lack thereof. Now, it does have some pretty significant finger grooves. That was its saving grace, so it still stayed pretty well planted, but there is no grip texture to speak of. And I mean, yeah, on the back, I mean, you can't really do very much with it. But the new one has absolutely changed that. Take a look at that texture. It's fantastic. Some really nice checkering in back as well. Man, I'll tell you what, this locks your hands in very well. Now, in the front, we still have our horizontal lines. Those are fine. They do okay. They're pretty soft. They could be a little bit better. But overall, the texture is welcome. And aside from the texture, they've included now panels that come with it, the side panels, and there are different sizes, so you can customize your grip. It's a little bit more modular rather, and I like that. I like that quite a bit. Backstrap as well. So depending on the size of your hand, you can really dial this thing in and make it very comfortable. We'll throw this magazine back in here, and this texture goes up a little bit higher as well. So very welcome change. I like what they've done this, and it feels very good in the hand. I kind of miss the finger grooves a little bit, I'll admit, on this one because it was so comfortable on the M9, but this still does the job, and we still have our nice sweep as we move up here under this just a little bit of a beaver tail, a little bit more so than the original, so a little bit of an addition. It doesn't really matter to me whether that's there or not. It doesn't bother me, but it wasn't necessary per se. I suppose some people with meatier hands would probably appreciate this, but it still sits very well in the hand, feels very good. A little bit of an undercut under the trigger guard there as well, similar to the older ones. But overall, from an ergonomics perspective, this thing really feels fantastic in the hand. Now, as we move up on the frame, you'll notice we've got some kind of grooves here. I kind of wish they had carried forward that grip texture right there. That would have been very welcome. And we've got little slots on both sides here, which I actually use as a reference. I like that quite a bit. It's just nice to have a place to put your thumb, and it's there. It's consistent every single time. Now we'll come back to the controls here in a moment, but I wanted to take a look at this accessory rail. This accessory rail is crazy. Now if we go back again to the original, there's not much there. We've got one groove or one tooth, if you will, but that's it to hang your toys. Well, now you've got a lot more option, and it stands out a lot more. Now, some people have said that they're not a fan of this. I am. I think it's fantastic, and I just think it looks a little bit more aggressive, looks a little nicer. Got some texture here on the front of the trigger guard. Hard to see that in the light. And a little bit more of a bump, or kind of juts out a little bit more on the front of the trigger guard. So if you use this as a reference or a place for your support, maybe index finger or something, you can definitely do that. I don't use that, but it's there, and it's a little bit more accentuated as well. Now for controls, our magazine release is not ambidextrous out of the box. I understand you can flip these things around. You experts out there, be sure to holler down below. Let us know your experience with that. There's a little bit of texture on it. The magazine release is fine. I kind of wish it was a little bit larger than that, but it will still serve. It will work. And then we've got our slide lock, slide release, a little bit of a serration on that. Not ambi out of the box, but still definitely does the job. Now, another unique thing about the Steyrs in general, now this is a modular frame. What that means is the trigger assembly on the inside is the serialized part, similar to something like a SIG, P320, or what have you. So perhaps in the future, you could have a different grip frame and slides, so you could have your one trigger assembly, and you could maybe go to an S9 or an M9 or something. They might be discontinuing the S9. I'm not really sure. But you still might have some different options to be able to do whatever you want with this. So that is pretty cool, and they've been doing this actually for a long time. So really cool stuff on the frame there. I like what they've done with it a lot. Let's check out the slide of the L9 for a moment or two, and right off the bat you'll notice there are front serrations on this, unlike the M9 variant. I like this quite a bit. I like front serrations. First, if you like to do press checks, now that's not a big thing with me. I don't do that, but I know a lot of people that do. But it's just an opportunity to break up the slide, a little bit more visual interest there. And it does say Steyr Arms Austria and 9x19. And we've got some great rear serrations back here as well. Now, one thing about the serrations, I do wish they were a little bit deeper. That's the same with a lot of firearms out there. If your hands are really wet or sweaty, bloody, what have you, they might be a little bit more of a chore to run. You can still do it, but the fact is it does have some decent serrations on it, and a little bit of millwork as well to break up the look of that slide, so it's not quite as blocky. Now, one thing about the slide, you'll notice, man, it sits very low. It really does. We've done this before, but I'll give you another look at that. This thing sits low. It is a flat shooter, and we'll talk more about the shooting here in a moment, but I like that. I like the overall design of this, and that slide works really well with the rest of the design. Now, as we move up, no serrations up top. However, the sights are absolutely fantastic. We've got our trapezoidal sights here. That front sight is just tremendous. Now, on the wish list for Steyr, I do wish it was an HD callout, maybe a bright yellow or green or something like that. But the fact is, it's very unique, it's very different. Our rear sights as well. I mean, it's a very cool sight lineup. It takes a little while to get used to, I will admit. But once you do, this thing is incredibly accurate. It's a lot of fun. It's easy to pick up. It's a relatively fast shooter as well. Now, there isn't much of a ledge for one-handed manipulations or anything on the rear sight, but they still are a lot of fun. I'm a huge fan of the trapezoidal sights. Somebody make something HD for this, still with trapezoid. That's my only request. Otherwise, I really like the design of this thing. All right, let's take a quick look at the disassembly of the L9-A2. Very easy to do, but you'll notice no tabs or levers or anything on our left side. It's only all going on the right side. Now, two things. We've got a button right here, and it says F and S. That's a manual lock on that. I've never used the manual lock. It does come with a key when you buy one of these, but I'm not a big fan of manual locks. Now, I am going to pull the trigger on this guy, and once I do, believe it or not, we're going to push on our manual lock. It's just a button, and then we're going to pull our lever down. See if I can do this on camera. There we go. And that releases the slide, and it just pops right off. So the disassembly on the Steyr is actually really very easy, and the rest of the parts are as you would expect. And we'll take a very quick look at everything just to give you an idea. Very easy to clean and maintain. Nothing terribly spectacular there. And then our frame, give you a look at that trigger module again. I have not tried to take one of these guys apart, but I understand it's actually pretty easy and certainly easy to maintain. Again, not an issue there at all. They're your rails, and they're decent. They're fine. They're not all the way around or anything like that. And then our barrel, give you a look at that. Maybe a tiny bit of a target crown in there, and we've got our feed ramp. That feed ramp actually is very well polished, so that's actually nice. These are good barrels. They do very well. And then we've got our guide rod and spring assembly. It is polymer. It's not steel or anything. I kind of wish it was. A little bit more weight up front is always a good thing, but it is captive, so that is what it is. Now, to put it all back together, we reverse the process, get our barrel in just like that. And our guide rod and spring assembly, this is take 3 on this because I never make this look very good. That actually went in a little bit better, so like so. And then we'll get our frame back on. Now I've got a trick for getting this back together because we've got our lever, and then I actually kind of help it along. Sometimes it pops right back in, sometimes it doesn't. But that's it. That's the disassembly of the Steyr. Very easy to do, very easy to clean and maintain, all that kind of good stuff. And it does have that manual lock if you're interested. The shooting experience with the L9-A2 was exactly what I thought it would be. Awesome. The new grip shape and texture firmly locks your hands in place. Although I like the finger grooves of the Gen 4, I hardly notice their absence while shooting. The low bore means the muzzle flip is barely there, and the extreme grip angle significantly softens the recoil impulse. The trapezoidal sights take a few rounds to get used to, but once they're dialed in, making accurate shots is a breeze. The trigger is light and predictable, though a more audible reset would be welcome for range time. In practical application, however, it does the job well. All in all, the L9-A2 is a seriously fun gun, and I always recommend trying one out. Let's take a look at the trigger of the L9 for a moment or two. I've often said that Steyrs have some of the better triggers out there on the market, and I stand behind that. Now, it is a polymer trigger with a safety lever. One thing about the safety lever, it disappears completely into the face of the trigger, so very comfortable. It doesn't stick out or anything like that. You don't feel an extra hump or anything. But then for the trigger pull, once we get that lever engaged, we've got just a little bit of take-up. It's extremely smooth, no grit or anything like that, and we get to a nice defined wall. And there's your brake, and the brake is coming in just under 5 pounds, just barely under. But it's a nice brake. It's reasonably crisp and certainly predictable. And then our reset, there's your reset. Now the reset on this is a little bit more audible than my M9, not by much. That's a small criticism I have of Steyrs, but you can definitely feel it. And we'll get back out to the start. We'll do this a couple more times. There's your take-up. Again, nice smooth take-up to a good wall. And there's your brake. And then we'll do a follow-up shot. Reset, follow-up. The follow-up shots are very quick. It has a short trigger. I mean, it really does. I like the trigger on the Steyrs overall, and this one is no exception. So guys, what do I think of the new L9-A2 MF from Steyr? I love it! With the new modularity of the added grip panels and backstrap, enhanced grip texture, magwell, and awesome trapezoidal sights, it's high on the recommendation list. Now, it comes in at an MSRP of $675, which is a bit high, though as more become available, I bet we'll see that price drop, and frankly, I think it's worth it. Now be sure to comment down below and share your experience with Steyr handguns. I'm always looking forward to a conversation with you, and otherwise, thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.